This is Tim.
And Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. How are you doing?
I'm good. And you?
I'm okay. It's been a work day, which means that I'm half asleep, but I actually took a nap this evening because I wasn't going to make it otherwise.
Nah.
Yeah, so we got an anthology this time, which is always a bit of a task to go through because you got a lot of different people's work to look at. Although I thought it was interesting timing that we got an anthology now, because in the previous Critiquing Comics episode, we were talking about how doing a short story can be more difficult than doing a long one.
Yeah.
In terms of writing. And here we have a collection of short stories, nearly all of them less than 10 pages. So I was kind of paying attention to like what were the topics of the stories, because whenever I start to think writing a story, which I never actually do anymore, I tend to think epic, I think. And it's hard for me to think small enough. So I was kind of trying to learn from these people, like what kind of topic do you build around for a comic story that's less than 10 pages? So this is called the Spider Forest Anthology, and I got a message from Christina Stipetic. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, sorry. Now, she was on top of things. So she sent this to me on September 6th, anticipating their Kickstarter, which is starting October 12th. That's planning ahead. I like that. Because sometimes I'll get comics from somebody whose Kickstarter is already launched, and they're like, here's our comic, could you review it? Like, well, by the time we get to it, your Kickstarter is going to be done. I hope you make it, but we can't help you. But in this case, if you plan ahead like this, and we didn't even have to jump the line or anything, this is just the next one in sequence that they've been coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was impressed that, there are some stories here that maybe weren't that great, or I didn't quite get what they were going for, but there are no stinkers here. I thought all of them ranged from pretty good to very good. I don't know, did you feel the same way?
I thought there was one that was really good. I liked it quite a bit. The rest were okay, and there were a couple that were like, I wonder what they're on about. But art wise, it was all good. Some of them were really, really good, and some of them were pretty good. And I could see where some of the heavy lifting or the focus that is needed for a short story isn't quite there yet. But I did enjoy it overall. And it's also a very easy read.
Yeah, in spite of the number of pages, 65 page PDF that we got. But yeah, it reads quick.
Yeah, no, but we got double pages.
Right, 65 spreads. That's right.
Yeah, 65 spreads. So this is actually, it was a joy to read, I should say. I got through the entire thing, which I rarely do. If not for time, then just for exhaustion. But this one was good. Some of these stories, and maybe during our review, I'll pull out one or two, I thought didn't quite have enough time. I wanted a little bit more. and some of them seem to need a little extra space to do something a little extra, but some of them were perfect, and I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering which ones you thought were like a little too short. There was one story called Ours by Karen H. It's one of several stories in here about like saying goodbye to a person or a place.
Yeah.
And it's this woman and man, and he's like in a hospital or something. And it seems pretty clear to me that this is one chunk of a larger story. And I had a lot of questions about what the situation was there. But this is just that the woman is leaving. She wants to get out of there, and she's been taking care of him. And she'd like him to come with her, but he says he's not ready to leave, and his hands are glowing or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was wanting, I had a lot of questions, like I said, but just that kind of that piece of the story at the same time, I could kind of appreciate the sentiment in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not bad, but that is one that I thought needs a little bit more to it. It wasn't there weren't enough cues in the art or in the writing or the telling of the story to flesh out the world enough for me to say, okay, that was the moment that something happened that either saved them or messed them up for the rest of their existence, or the gravitas of the situation is lost on me because it's missing some of those cues. And so I'm figuring out the dynamic of the situation, and I can understand the emotional content of the situation, and the artwork looked fine. But it's just that, okay, so there just seemed to be just a little something more that it needed to make it shine. But there were some bright spots, and before I forget them, let me
yeah, please
pull them out. Okay, King Dog. I liked.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. That was very funny.
Yeah, it was humorous. It was on point for the characteristics of cats and dogs. And that first page was actually quite good, where they announced that they've conquered the land and it's theirs, and he's like, nope, not yet. And then he pisses on the wall and he's like, yep, now they're conquered. That was
stake out his territory.
Start. Yeah. The Under the Floor was intriguing. It's about the girl who had this kind of walk-in closet, which kind of felt like an elevator because there was a crack in the floor.
Yeah.
That was intriguing. I kind of wanted more. But I did like it.
Yeah, I like that just as kind of a slice of someone's childhood. And, I think many of us have felt kind of weird about a certain place or imagined something about it.
Yeah. The Telltale Violin.
Yeah, the first story.
Yeah, the first story. I also like this one. I wanted it to be a little bit more over the top, but it was pretty good. And it kind of executed correctly, I should say. The second story, Treasure, I liked quite a bit. The artwork is phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah,
kind of cartoony of kids. And this was another one. I felt like it might have been based on an actual experience. Because the kids find this nail gun and they're breaking stuff up with it, and somehow nobody gets injured or killed. And just that kind of felt more like real life, that, luckily, because if it were set up as a story, somebody's going to lose an eye at least.
Yeah.
But the fact that nobody got hurt makes it feel like it's probably a true story.
Yeah. It really was well told. It had an art style that was so clearly thought through that nothing seemed out of place, and everything seemed to track very, very smoothly.
Yeah, and we should credit the writer. That's Andy Purviance.
Okay, yeah. The story after that, Tunnels, was also very good. I liked the twist at the end.
Yeah, that was the story where I was most surprised by the ending.
Yeah, that was really, really good, and it the ending itself kind of makes you realize what these people are all about, and what an interesting and actually very positive story. I really, really like that.
Positive in what way? So, well, we should explain what happens in this.
Maybe we shouldn't, because I mean, it's such a short story and it's a nice surprise. But the ideology of the people involved was different than what I expected, and that's the twist of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really like that. And if you want a mild hint, it reminds me of Star Trek when it was good. But of all of these stories, the one story that I thought was the best, The Journey.
Yeah, that was another one with a nice twist ending.
Yeah, the twist was nice. The way it's described as he's doing it is kind of like in a heist. They explain the heist as they're pulling off the heist, and it's kind of a bizarre journey that he has to go through. And I'm trying to figure out, as I'm reading it, why he's on this journey. When we get to the goal, that was lovely and very positive. And these positive little vignettes that don't seem so positive at the beginning are the best. So I would say for me, those stories that I've mentioned so far were kind of the ones that touched me the most.
Yeah, well, so I noticed there were a number of stories in here. I don't know if it's the influence of Game of Thrones or what, but there's a lot of fantasy genre in here. And I don't really care about the fantasy genre at all. I just roll my eyes at it. And I mean, there's something that I don't like about it. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I just feel like it's tired. And so when I first started reading The Journey, I was kind of rolling my eyes at it too. And then it got to the end, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of funny to me, kind of humorous.
Yeah, it was funny. It was charming. It had a lot of things. And for me, fantasy is not really. I don't dislike it, and I don't roll my eyes at it. It's not my preferred genre, but it's just about preference. I prefer science fiction or horror and that kind of thing. But I had no problem with it being fantasy. But like I said, the artwork for all of this is quite fine. The last story, though, the artwork is very advanced. Kind of has a Disney feel to it almost.
Okay, this is one question by Sophie. Oh, good grief! So sorry, Sophie. I'm trying to read your last name, and I need to zoom in on the page here to see it.
Yeah.
Sophie, Frotzschner. Am I reading that right? Pfrotzschner.
Yeah, that's right. Beautiful, beautiful illustration. Has a lot of mood. Has a lot of depth to it. The question that is asked is actually kind of charming. I really wanted there to be more. This story should not have been 4 pages. This story needed another 4 pages just to add a little bit more background to it, because it is such a nice punchline, but it's lacking a bit of setup.
Yeah, it's blinking, you miss it.
Yeah, kind of. And as a last story, I would like it to have a little more oomph to it. But it is such a beautiful short piece. I just want a little bit more from the build up to that punchline. But yeah.
Yeah, I like all the ones you mentioned. I kind of liked the Housekeeping by M.J. Alexander. It's kind of again, fantasy genre, but it's a comedy, and this kind of magician is dealing with these, what he calls them, pixie roaches. They're kind of like flying something. You just look like glowing butterflies, and it's kind of an infestation, and they're destroying his stuff, and he can't get rid of them. Finally manages to get rid of them in a humorous way, which is also a humane way of getting rid of them, at least to the pixies. But yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, that one wasn't bad. Although this is the way that I remove spiders from my house. Although my girlfriend's like, no, kill it. It's like, just calm down. Just put it outside. But yeah, no, I quite liked it. Although he seems a little bit of a goofball.
Yeah.
The main character.
Yeah, I think he is, but
yeah, okay. Yeah.
But it is a comedy, so
yeah.
What did you think of the Blueberry Story?
The Blueberry Story,
Blueberry Heaven by Gerolf and Vayandel. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the setup. I liked the chase between the fox, the bird, and the owl, and the protagonist. I like the idea of the secret blueberry patch that no one can find. But the ending I wasn't quite sure about.
Yeah, it kind of ended with a whimper.
Well, I was kind of wondering, which the punchline is not quite there. Yeah, it is kind of a whimper. But the setup and all these things, and the kind of incidental magic that seems to happen, it's kind of odd in that way.
Yeah, I felt like I was missing something. And it's one of the longer stories. It's not that it was too short, although a lot happens in it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of dense in its telling. So, especially that first page is like, pow. Have a nice read. But yeah, I thought it was well paced. It had a lot that was happening. I like the setup and all of that stuff, but yeah, the punchline was like, wait a minute, that's it? New story? Okay. So yeah, there were, like I said, there were some stories that just seemed to be a little bit short. Again, that was one of them, only for the fact that it seems that they didn't quite have the timing for the punchline that they needed.
The one that I think I liked the least, because of I think it's a good artist making bad choices. The Tomb of Komar by Felix Wright. The thing that drove me nuts about this is that the panel borders are so distracting that, and the lettering is, I don't know, something about the lettering is a little, the whole thing looks kind of messy to me.
Mm.
And it looks sort of like it was carved into wood, actually. But yeah, I was so distracted by the panel borders, I could hardly read the story. And within the panels also, it's just a little hard to follow. And I was really relieved when I got to the next story, that Fool's Gould, which is really sharp art. And I was like, this is so clear. I can understand exactly what I'm looking at, and it's not messing with my eyes. But yeah, that Tomb of Komar was kind of tough to get through. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah. I'm looking at it now, and I didn't have trouble getting through it. Although I do agree there are some choices here that no, a lot of elements overlap each other. So we have some word balloons overlapping other word balloons, obscuring what the other person said. And I get it. It's supposed to be
interrupting,
talking over the other person. Yeah. But then there are panels that overlap other panels, and there are characters that overlap panel borders. And so it seems to be really it seems to be fighting for attention. Everything is fighting for attention and space. And also because of the heavy ink and then the dark coloring on top of that, it reads it doesn't read smoothly. There's a lot of sorry, I'm looking at the art, getting lost in it. But
that next to last page, I had trouble understanding. Apparently, one of them is flying and carrying the other around, but I didn't really get anything else from that page.
Apparently one of them has wings, and
but I don't think we need a whole page just for like 6 panels. I didn't feel like it was worth 6 panels. It didn't really progress much in those 6 panels.
I think the artist is a little too focused on and then what happened as their storytelling rhythm. Because you're right. You could have had one panel where the character slips and falls, another panel where the other character jumps off and catches the person, and then a third panel where he spreads wings, and it would have been a better use of space. How the character with wings zipped and soared everywhere isn't really that important.
Wow.
It's better to get a feel of glorious flying than all the detail. So I think you're right in that sense. It is a little bit too cluttered, and not everything needs to be touched on the page. You can have some negative space here. That's
really lacking negative space. That's my problem with it.
And I understand that being in a cave or in a room, there's always going to be background. There's not going to be like open sky or anything like that. But it really doesn't matter. People want to be able to focus on the character or the object or whatever it is, so they can move through the story. And once you've established the location, you don't need to constantly reestablish the location within the next panel. So you can have a blank background to pull the eye in that direction. And it works a lot easier, and it's less labor intensive. And because labor for the comic artist is also going to be labor for the reader if you do it that way. You want to be able to push and pull the art to push the eye.
But I mean, I think Felix is really talented. I mean, I really like the look of his characters. I think he's not making the right choices of how to present his story.
Well, no, I think the panels are a little bit much, and like I said, the overlap stuff. But yeah, each panel is turned up to 11 here, because each panel has a background. Each panel has scene accurate coloring, as in, if the area is brown, all the panels are going to be brown. None of them are going to pull any other colors to push or pull emotion. It's very much what it is or what was there. He drew it, and it was everything is omnipresent. So he drew it.
Yeah, and then when some of the actions that happen in the story, I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Right.
Like when they think it's a dead end and there's some sort of artwork there, and one of them sort of zaps the artwork and something happens, and I guess the door opens. Yeah. But yeah, it was hard to understand what was happening in the panels.
Yeah. Accuracy is not your friend in this kind of situation. Yeah, be a little looser with it. I mean, I didn't mind the story. I just didn't think that. It was difficult to read, and then the ending of it. Even though they seem to have like escaped with some kind of treasure.
Yeah, but we don't know what it is. It just looks like some books or cards or square coins, or I don't know.
Yeah, but it also the other characters like whatever, and it seems to mean very little to that person as well. So I'm kind of like, okay. So the punchline here is what, or what is the actual thing you wanted to say with this? So yeah, it is missing on a couple of points, but even though I had a lot to say about it, and you did too, for me personally, it's not bad artistically, and even the story is not bad. Just a little bit in the telling, he needs to push and pull some things, but yeah. And for me, actually, this one is not the one that I like the least. It's an okay one.
Yeah. I was, like I said, there were a number of stories here that seemed to be about saying goodbye to a place or a person.
Yeah.
There's a story, Leaving This Comfortable Place, by Morgan Lees. And again, it seems to have a bit of a, I don't know, fantasy or medieval feel to it, but this is a guy who's been living in a cave for some time, and for whatever reason, he's moving on to somewhere else, and he's thinking about, this was my home for some time, and, I'm going to have to leave here, and, I think we've all been through that. I've moved a number of times in my life. So yeah, the setting is not necessarily important in that story. It could have been anywhere at any time because it's a pretty universal thing. Yeah,
basically he's leaving because the city is encroaching on his area.
Right. Gentrification.
yeah, basically. But
he says the city will swallow this place soon. It sounds like some people I know who have left San Francisco.
Well, in San Francisco, I was swallowed by dog shit, but, that's a whole other thing.
Got too expensive.
No, yeah, that too. I mean, I used to live in San Francisco, but...
and also, like, they were telling me, like, all the places that they knew had closed down and been replaced by other stuff, more upscale stuff.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. It's for the Silicon Valley crowd, but there seems to be actually not dog shit, but human shit problem in San Francisco, as there's no place for people to go to the bathroom. You just go bathroom everywhere. So there was a conference for some sort of medical association that they canceled when they got to the venue because the area was not sanitary.
Wow.
I mean, they were saying the city was not sanitary, so they could not hold their convention there, and they just left it.
Huh.
That's pretty fucking embarrassing. But anyway, for this one, he's been in this cave for 5 centuries, which is a point of fantasy at this point.
Yeah.
It's not a guy living in a cave; it's a magical person living in a cave, and I feel like I'm missing a lot of information here.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So for me, this is the one that I have the biggest problem with.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It hints at a much, much larger and possibly a more interesting story. But basically what we have is a guy looking out his window and saying, yep, time to move. And that's the end of the comic. And it's like, wait a minute. Is there not more?
Well, this might be another one that's a chunk of a much longer story that's published elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
I can understand that, but it just seems to be a little bit too thin. And for a place that he's lived in for 5 centuries, it's rather sparse.
Yeah. I mean, by that time, I would have accumulated so much junk.
Yeah. I had some problems with this one. But again, artistically, it is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But that was basically it. The high points and the low points for me. Overall, the anthology is worth getting.
Mm-hmm.
For the art alone.
Yeah.
But of course, for me as an artist, I always look at that and say, I need a sample of this person's work, and I need to see where this person's at, and I want to have this on my shelf. That's how I look at it. The stories are secondary, but there are some nice stories that can be deconstructed as a learning experience if you are a comic maker, which I am, so I always look at it that way. But if you're just a person wanting to read a couple of cool stories, it's here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will link to their Kickstarter because this we like I said, they got it to us in plenty of time.
Yeah. So do you have a recommendation for how much leeway they should have before their Kickstarter?
In this case, it was about a month. Actually, it was just over a month. So about a month would be good. Because depending on our schedules and how many other comics are ahead of you in line, it may take this long.
Yeah.
I crave superheroic content. Let's see what's on.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Nah, I don't think so.
I'm Batman.
Not really what I'm looking for.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Ugh, absolutely not.
This is Robin the Boy Wonder. I'm Batman.
Aha, now that's more like it.
If you see Adam West as the one true Batman, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other Thursday on your favorite podcast source to hear Tim and Paul discuss the 1966 series and everything connected with it. What's the podcast called?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
We got a couple of pieces of mail from people whose comics we previously critiqued.
Okay.
So Barry Corbett wrote and said, "Hi guys, I'm the author of Terminal Velocity. Thank you for taking the time to read and review the book. I know how many of these you receive, and I'm grateful to get some honest feedback. I hadn't meant to just dump it into your mailbox. I thought my press release had been posted into the message field. I'll paste it in below," which he did. Anyway, I do agree with some of your criticism. Parts of it felt flat to me when I took some time away from the project and then tried to read the completed memoir with a fresh eye. Then again, memoir is a subgenre on its own, and much of the work I've read by other artists often deals with everyday situations. but I can't argue if the reader gets bored and loses incentive to complete the book. Perhaps I should have edited it down a bit. Anyway, here's the original PR. So, yeah, I'm not sure what text box he put that into, but it might have been in the message that I got from Dropbox when it was put in there, but I might have just overlooked it.
Okay. I
didn't go back and look, but yeah. Anyway, thank you for clearing that up, Barry.
Yeah, thank you. I would say boredom or interest doesn't always dictate if I finish a project, if I finish reading a project. So when it comes to reading through, if I can see that it's going somewhere, I can. But if it's random vignettes of your life that are told out of sequence, I have no way to find a direction through. So it's not that there is no merit to the stories you told. Some of those did stay with me a bit, but the box cutter one was a bit disturbing. But yeah, I think that was might have been my biggest criticism at the time, just that it seemed to lack direction. But I mean, if you can find a way to sow direction through those stories, perhaps in reordering them, or adding a story or two at the beginning, you can keep all of those stories. None of them are terrible. They just seem to lack direction for me.
And then also, in our previous episode, we talked about The Solar Grid by Ganzier, and Ganzier also wrote to us. Thanks to you and Mulele for taking the time out to read and critique Chapter 1 of The Solar Grid. Sorry to hear you didn't like it so much. Not sure whether or not you're interested in checking Chapter 2 out, but if, despite the excessive nouvelle vague approach to storytelling, you are interested, I'm including download links here for your reading pleasure. So he sent us number 2.
Sorry, remind me which one this is.
The one we did right before this episode, where it's like in the future at some point, although it seemed to be at several different points in the future, and remember the started with those 2 kids in the junkyard.
Right, yeah. No, that has a lot to it, but I think focus again was my problem. But I did read through the entire thing. I'm curious. So if you could throw me that link.
Okay. So, yeah, I hadn't mentioned this to you before, but I actually started listening to your other podcast.
Oh, nice.
Tokyo it's Comic Attack? No S. For some reason, well, up until recently, I could find it in the crappy Apple podcast app, but I couldn't find it in Pocket Casts. I don't know if I was accidentally typing Comics Attack, and so I wasn't finding it, or if it just took a while to filter into Pocket Casts, but it's there now. And I listened to the first 4 episodes.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean,
they get better. Sorry.
If I were actually drawing comics, it might be a little bit more applicable to me, but it's interesting to hear you guys talking about your art.
Well, the first couple of episodes, we were like, oh yeah, we're just going to talk about ourselves, and that got old real quick. So I think the first maybe 3 or 4 episodes is that, but after that, we're just like, okay, let's review stuff, and we talk about issues in comics. Podcast that's going to go up either later tonight or tomorrow is. I've got his picture. I don't have his name. Gary somebody.
Gary somebody, okay.
Yeah. He made some comments about comics, and he's just like, this is the guy who created the Punisher, and he's like, let's get rid of superhero comics and restart.
Oh, was that Jerry Conway?
Yeah, Jerry. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's spelled with a G. So
yeah. So we talk about what he said, and if we get into some of the issues that we've had with comics, mainstream comics growing up or now. I'm pretty sure you know where I'm at with all that stuff, but Oscar and Chris had other things to say. Anyway, I feel like they balance me a little bit, but
Well, I was interested to hear you say, well, now this was like April, and maybe you don't feel this way anymore, but to hear you say back then that you had been like looking at some various kind of comics and kind of taking a new appreciation in the art in mainstream comics, like Big Two comics.
I've been taking in a lot of different comics from a lot of different people, but my main source here is kayfabe, comic kayfabe.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that on your show.
Yeah, and basically they've been going over artist editions of that, and they get into and really talk about and deconstruct a lot of the art and writing of, for example, Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Daredevil run. Mm-hmm. They talk about Frank Miller's art on Daredevil in the artist edition version of the work. A lot of artists and showing how they work, and for me that's where the real gold is. It's not just in the comic as a product, but in how it was constructed. Mm-hmm. And seeing all of that has really made me want to re-examine my relationship with the Big Two. And because if I look at it just as a product, I'll dismiss a lot of it. But when I'm looking at the people who made those books mm-hmm. and the craft that they put into it, I do have respect for them wherever they are. Mm. It doesn't matter if Bill Zankiewicz is working on big numbers for an indie or if he's working on a major book for DC. I'm down for it. So in that sense, I've been re-examining all of this stuff, and one of the things that I said in our review of Ripple was that I feel like I missed something really important that would have set me on a different path in my comics life by not being aware of Ripple when it first came out in, I think, the early 2000s. I missed it by 20 years. So I would have hit where I am now, maybe at 30 instead of at 50. I don't know, but I look at that work, and having deconstructed it, both with you on this podcast, but also with the other guys on Tokyo Comic Attack. I did a really deep dive on it, and I found a lot of the love that I thought I had lost for comics there, mm-hmm. and so it's kind of changed me. Wow. I'm still not about to drop lots of money on Marvel, but I at least can look at it with less disdain and more of what is the artist about? What was the situation in this?
Okay. But yeah, I've only listened to the first 4. Number 4 was part 1 of a 2-parter talking about your process. So yeah. I guess I'm not to the good stuff yet. But
no. And also, man, just a little tip here. after recording that, I re-examined our process and changed it completely. So that's no longer valid.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, man. If I say anything offensive to you, let me know, and I will mea culpa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you need to talk about?
No, I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm working on comics, and if anybody's curious as to what I'm doing, they go first on my Patreon and then second on my IG, if I can remember. My relationship with IG is a little bit strained at the moment. They keep telling me no when I want to place an ad, and it's like, no, you can't have a person smoking a cigarette. It's like, what? No, you can't use the word fuck in an ad. What?
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I do put up pages. I'm currently working on 2 stories at the same time, so they kind of alternate between this and that, but the art styles are slightly different. You can figure it out. And I always put the title of the comic I'm working on and the page number, so it shouldn't be too much of a headache. But anyway, there you go.
Okay. All right. So if you would like us to critique your comic, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. So till next time, this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. There's always a bit of tension of whether you're going to say "and Mulele" or you're going to go off in some other direction.
I just do that to mess with you, man. I'm sorry if it's causing you stress.
I think the whole listenership is probably wondering by this point: is he going to say "and Mulele"?
Yeah.